Cool. So, hi everyone. So welcome to today's Brewtanix session. We'll first be kicking things off with a quick welcome and introduction here at Bytes. And then what you'll hear from our partners Nutanix and Citrix, who will be providing some key updates and innovations which you'll be interested to hear. We'll also be joined by a fabulous brewery who will be providing some beer tasting for us today. Hopefully you'll receive your packages in the post, likely last week or the beginning of this week. So before I hand over, I'm just going to quickly run through some housekeeping. So you will be muted at all times. If you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat box on the side of the screen. The webinar will be recorded and we'll be sharing this with you post-webinar, and there will be a very short feedback form at the end which will pop up. So just like literally 3 questions, if you could answer those for us, we really do appreciate your feedback on sort of these types of sessions, and it helps us to tailor things moving forward. So without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Dan, my colleague at Bytes. Thank you.
Thanks, Cassie. So hi everyone, my name is Dan Peeling and I head up the infrastructure and platform team here at Bytes. Very, very quick intro from me, because you can guess we're going straight into the beer taste session first. But we sit under our hybrid infrastructure proposition. So under there, as you can imagine, there are a vast array of different topics, services and solutions to help you with any challenges that you're facing. And we've got a vast array of expertise behind the scenes, subject matter experts who are here to support yourselves as clients of Bytes. So we're running these types of events to highlight some strong technology partnerships and complementary vendor sets where we as Bytes see there's benefits of the reference architecture and validate solutions that can deliver value to our clients. And today, as Cassie said, we have Nutanix and Citrix with us, who are highlighting market-leading technologies and how their partnership can lend true value to your VDI estates today. As Cassie said, obviously we welcome any questions throughout. Obviously pop them into the chat or feel free to contact us afterwards. But now I'll happily hand over to Matt Lincoln from Siren Brewery, who's going to kick off our session this afternoon.
Cheers, Dan. Appreciate it. Hey everyone, my name's Matt. I'm the events manager at Siren Craft Brew. For those of you who've not heard of Siren, we're a small kind of modern craft brewery based in Finch Hampstead, which is just outside of Reading. We were established in 2013, so we've been going for it'll be 10 years next year. Actually, a little bit of random knowledge. I think Darren, our owner, was formerly of the company before it turned into Bytes. So he was, I guess, very much in this kind of industry. And there's definitely a crossover between tech and beer, it seems. Since to be the official beer sponsor of most cloud security companies and things like that. Yeah, we've been going nearly 10 years now, and basically we're just here to make really tasty beer. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to kind of talk about a few of these. So let's kick off. I'm going to start on the first one, which is Lumina, just here. So it's the small blue can. Just trying to grab hold of your can of Lumina. So this is our one of our core range beers, so available all year round, so you can always get hold of this. As a business, we kind of split our products into core range, seasonal, and one-offs. So the core range being those ones that you can always absolutely get hold of. Generally, we'll find them in the supermarkets and things like that. Very accessible. They're also very accessible in terms of the way that they taste and the styles that they are. They introduce you to us as a brewery. And then if you like these, then you can kind of wander off into our wacky world of these one-off specials that we do. But Lumina is our best-selling beer. It's actually fairly new. It's the latest core range beer that we developed. It came out around about 2 years ago now. It's a 4.2% session IPA. Session means exactly what you think it means. It's there for a bit of a session. It's that kind of beer that you can keep back to. If you're in the pub, if you're at home, having a bit of an all-dayer or something like that, maybe start drinking at 12 o'clock while you're running the barbecue. You can have 2 or 3 of these. They're just really easy drinking and flavoursome, but B, at 4.2%, on the lower end of the scale, especially of the kind of beers that we brew. But as you can see, it pours this really beautiful kind of golden, kind of orangey yellow colour. Really inviting kind of way, look. Lots of like mango and grapefruit, kind of tropical fruits on the nose. Next to no bitterness. Really easy drinking. And to boot, it's gluten-free as well. So if you're sensitive to gluten or intolerant, then you'll be able to drink this beer. The way that we kind of interesting kind of process in the way that we brew our gluten-free beers, and the reason that they taste so good is we actually brew it with ingredients that include gluten. So rather than modify the recipe that maybe lots of either breweries or people that are making any gluten-free product, they will remove the ingredient contains gluten. We don't actually do that, and we're able to use something called Clarex, which is an enzyme initially developed to give beer clarity. When we say clarity, make it clear, drops out the haze, like you would expect a lager to look. Didn't actually work out that way, but it had a really cool added benefit. It's probably more beneficial that it actually cuts up gluten to the point where it's almost undetectable, or it is undetectable. So actually bites out the gluten to the point where it's below 20 ppm, which is that EU certified threshold, and actually apart from celiac is fine for people to drink. So that's why when it tastes brilliant, we're not actually taking anything out to not taking any flavor out. We've got this fantastically tasty beer that is easy drinking, low ABV, gluten-free, and since we launched it, we actually launched this beer in the lockdown, because what could possibly go wrong launching a brand new beer when all the pubs are closed? But it's become our best-selling product for that reason. It ticks all the boxes. It really is beer for everyone. So hopefully you enjoy that. I think I'll pass back now for first part of the presentation. You can all enjoy your aluminum, and I'll be back shortly for the next beer tasting.
So next up, I think, is you, John.
Oh, I was just massively taken away by what looked like a really nice, refreshing beer as I just gently sip on my water bottle. Okay, let's get this going. I was going to fire up my screen. Just bear with me, please, 1 second. Awesome. Okay. So they told me I had 20 minutes, but I'm guessing people are probably more interested in getting back to drinking beer, which is a shame because I've got 84 slides. So there you go. Anyway, this is my first Brewtanix actually, and I've known and worked with Chris for quite a few years. So thanks for inviting me along. I'm generally quite excited about this, and I had a bit of a panic when you spoke to me the other day, and I think, oh, sure this isn't virtual, sure it's online, but good. I'm really pleased to see it. Bit sad I didn't get any beer, but hey ho, there we go. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of Citrix today, really. I know a lot of you are probably existing Citrix customers. Maybe some of you are old Citrix customers and no longer with us. Maybe you've never heard of Citrix. So I'm kind of going to be pitching around about there. And really, we've gone through, as I'm sure anybody who keeps up to date with IT Press, we are going through quite a rapid change at the moment. But really, in my first time in 6 years of being at Citrix, it really feels like today we have a really good focus, a great proposition, and I'm kind of really excited to share that with you all today. Usually when I do this slide, we're talking about how the world of work is changing. And I've been on a number of these sessions where we talk about, in this sort of post-pandemic world, we're looking at hybrid work and what do we mean by hybrid working? And typically that conversation is around, well, I want to work from anywhere. I'm predominantly going to work from home. Maybe I'll do a day or two a week in the office. Maybe I'll be out visiting different sites or different customers. And I think if anybody else who's been working this week, certainly Monday and Tuesday, the office was the place to be. Unfortunately, I didn't quite make it into the office this week at all, and it was completely unbearable. At Citrix, we do genuinely work on Citrix, and what was really interesting is we, both me and my partner, quickly shifted out of the home office because it was getting far too hot. Back inside, trying to keep cool. We ended up working, I think, 2 or 3 different rooms this week, just trying to keep a bit cool. And that kind of hybrid work, I never thought it would quite take that on, but maybe this is the world that we're working in. So that's kind of what our end users, our customers are kind of expecting to work like today. They want to be able to work from anywhere. And if we're going to attract the best talent into our organizations, then really we have got to provide these kind of flexible ways of working to be able to do that. On top of that, as IT, we are also increasingly pressured to modernize, whether that's through traditional app and desktop deployments, whether that's embracing cloud, whether that's looking at our on-premises infrastructure, whether that's looking at re-architecting applications. That is constant. And I think the thing that we've learned in the last 2 years is that is only getting faster. It's only getting more. That agenda of stuff that IT has to do is only getting bigger. The other thing as well, I just wanted to quickly cover off is employee experience, which I think 2 or 3 years ago, employee experience would have been something that HR dealt with. You know, health and wealth, what benefits packages are we going to get? And really now what we're starting to see through the research that we've done with customers is actually employee experience is now becoming a joint HR and an IT initiative. What is the best way that we can get employees to be their most productive, to do their best work? What does that seamless integrated experience look like for an organization when they're onboarding, when people are in the normal run of BAU, to even them exiting? Is what does that employee experience look like? And it's no longer just purely the gift of HR. Now, so I'm assuming, I've made a massive assumption here that everybody on this call is kind of working in IT. And obviously that translates into initiatives for ITs. How do I accelerate? How do I get quicker? How do I be more efficient with modernizing our infrastructure stack? How am I then looking at the attack surface? Now we're providing employees with SaaS-based applications and mobile devices and all this kind of stuff. How am I still maintaining and making sure that my attack surface is as small as possible? And now that this thing of user experience has now been inherited from HR, how am I delivering that user productivity through, you know, collaboration tools, through access to applications, through, you know, single sign-on experiences? How am I kind of doing that? So one thing that obviously we're very focused on at Citrix is how can we modernize IT using desktop as a service? I'm going to cover off why we've gone through that name change very shortly, so don't worry, questions in the question box if you've got a question about what the product's called today. What we're trying to do with Citrix DaaS as a cloud delivered service is deliver that kind of flexible workspace to any user on any device anywhere. And that message hasn't changed since I've been involved with Citrix for the last 20 odd years or worked here for the last 6. It's about providing the right application, the right desktop at the right time in the right location. And how can we make that adaptive? How can we, if I log on from my corporate device, how can I change the posture of that if I then log on from a device that's unknown to my organization? And really, that's the kind of stuff that we're focused on now. This is what new Citrix is about. And really what we're trying to do there is, you know, meet the needs of that workforce, speed up acceleration, and also from an IT perspective, make it nice and easy to look after, which I think is kind of what we all want. You know, it's far too complicated at times, and really that simplification is something that we're entirely focused on. So choosing the right VDI, there is not one size fits all, and you'll be no doubt delighted to hear that Citrix offer a number of solutions completely suited to your kind of particular use case. For those customers who still need to retain on premises, we changed our packaging at the beginning of the year, and we still fully support, and always have done and will continue to do, a fully supported on premises, completely managed by you Citrix DaaS solution. For the on-premises environments, you'll start to see us refer to that as Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops, slightly different from what we called the Virtual Apps and Desktop service, which we've now renamed to Citrix DaaS. But if you want to kind of own and brew your own, IT managed VDI is the way to go. Obviously, we still have LTSR options there. We've also reintroduced the ability to be able to burst to public clouds as well, which was a feature that was previously depreciated. Hybrid DaaS, if you've ever met us at Citrix, and we talk about, you know, Citrix Cloud, putting your workers in a resource location, then hybrid DaaS is what we mean by that. So this idea that you have your on-premises VDI environment working on something like a nicely configured Nutanix cluster. And maybe then what you can do is going to put some workloads in a cloud bursting capacity, maybe for, seasonal workers, opening new offices in remote locations. And you can introduce a new resource location, put some resources there, and deliver those alongside your on-premises architecture as well. We also offer what we kind of tuning and then it's simplified DAS. And this is really putting this more on there for information than anything else, which is basically a Citrix managed option. So what you'll be able to do for those smaller SMB style customers, sign up from a marketplace of your choice and buy a Citrix managed offering whereby there's literally no infrastructure for you to look after. I'm not going to go too much into business benefits because I've got a demo. I'm going to try and do a live demo, which is scaring the life out of me at the minute, but we'll just kind of cover off some of these business benefits. That idea of being able to scale up and scale down your resources, inherently built now into Citrix DAS. So if you are consuming items from public cloud, obviously Citrix Auto Scale is there to start powering those units down and spinning them up either on a scheduled basis or on a capacity basis as well. Our management tools as well, if you need to move images from on-premises to cloud and you maintain that single image management across different public clouds and also your on-premises infrastructure through the imaging service, then you've got that as well, again, all included as part of you kind of standard Citrix DAS license. And also true hybrid cloud flexibility. So doesn't matter where you need to deliver an app or a desktop from, there's a location there. And as far as the end user goes, you kind of just can see all that in one place. I like to cover this one off just purely because I think sometimes people think that all Citrix do is we do published apps and we do published desktops. And there is far more to Citrix DAS these days than perhaps the Citrix of old. Kind of going from left to right, we saw a massive uptake in remote PC access, which I have to be honest, when I first encountered remote PC access, I wasn't quite sure what the use case was. But having seen that come through the pandemic, it's clear that idea of being able to put the VDA on a PC sat under somebody's desk in an office and effectively remote into that in the same workspace that your end users can get other applications for really does make sense. We still do the traditional Windows Server apps and desktops. So for people as old as me and Chris, things like, we would have called MetaFrame or Presentation Server in days gone by. Spin up your server, get as many people on the bus as humanly possible, deliver great experiences that way. We're still doing that. Obviously, we can enable those sessions with things like GPU today. We can virtualize end user profiles today. Work great on infrastructure, HCI infrastructure like Nutanix. I think back on, Chris and I have reminisced over this many times. And I think back when I was a consultant, as opposed to buying these huge, great big complex flex pod kind of style things, being able to actually build up Lego brick style in these kind of environments, whether they're session app servers or VDI desktops, would have been an absolute boon to me. Then we start to move to that hybrid world. So we hear lots of customers looking at things like Windows 10 multi-session, but delivering those kind of experiences alongside what they're doing on premises, and also Linux apps and desktops as well. Surprisingly, the number of customers we're speaking to now who have a requirement to deliver Linux apps back to end users and also desktop end users, if we'd have spoke about this 18 months ago, it would have been just pure developer use case. I think now there's an interesting conversation going on about maybe I don't want to be completely tied into a Microsoft ecosystem, and I'm exploring other ways that I can deliver key business apps to end users. And those conversations for us seem to be increasing all the time. If you've never done too much with Linux, Linux apps and desktops, really encourage you to look at it. We've made some amazing improvements in the VDA recently, where it's pretty much now feature comparable against the Windows VDA. To the point now where it is now a GUI installation wizard as well, which certainly saved me a lot of time Googling how to use Linux, which has been an experience in itself nonetheless. And then we kind of move into this more DAS delivery thing. So, and we'll talk about the Citrix managed option here. Alongside as well, things like delivering web and SaaS-based applications back to those end users. So what we're trying to do now in that focus, in that lens of Citrix Workspace, is not only deliver all the applications and desktops that an end user might need, but also their internal and external web and SaaS-based applications as well. So we sign on once into Workspace, and then we basically give the end users access to every application, every desktop that they will need. Doesn't matter how we're delivering that application, we're going to secure it, We're going to put it in a nice secure container, deliver it back to the Citrix workspace. And then on top of that, we can then start applying security policies like adaptive authentication, which is going to change my posture depending on how and where I'm logging on from. And that down to things like application access or bits of an application I don't want to give access to. Maybe I need to disable copy and print from unknown devices. Maybe I need to do session-based watermarking if I'm in a specific location. All those technologies now apply across web-based apps and also VDI desktops and Windows and Linux applications as well. Obviously, as IT, that sounds really complicated. That sounds like a lot of effort to actually get that stuff going. For those of you who've maybe come across our Citrix Cloud interface, everything is managed in one place. So whether I'm configuring Citrix DAS and trying to deliver Windows 10 desktops on premises out to a bunch of users, or maybe I need to provide single sign-on access to ServiceNow and aggregate all of that stuff into Citrix Workspace. That's all now done from one control plane, from one interface. The biggest feature change we've made on this that I think is probably the most relevant is that we've now got true role-based access control. It used to be a little bit hit and miss, but we can now, if we're an organization globally and we've got separate IT departments within, we can now role-based access control based on scope. So we could create a scope for the finance team, and they could have administrative access to their applications, their desktops throughout all the Citrix different portfolio products there. So whether that's things like Citrix Secure Private Access or Citrix DAS, we can sort of introduce this idea of scopes. Only those management components are available to the authorized users. The other thing that we're really focused on as well is that speed of update that we have with Citrix Cloud. You will get features quicker as a Citrix DAS customer than you will do for a typical on-premises customer. If you are on-prem and you are a current release customer, you will get features approximately every quarter. That's what's as part of your current release. If you are LTSR, need to maintain LTSR, then you'll have to wait till we release the next LTSR. Because the cloud features happen so quickly, we've now got a webpage, updates.cloud.com. I've included a QR code there if you kind of want to see it. And there you'll be able to find where we are in terms of those new releases coming into the cloud environment. So at the moment, you'll see that things like the image portability service, so this idea of being able to move an on-premises workload to the cloud backwards and forwards to maintain image updates, that's currently in tech preview. Some of these as well will have a link. If you wanted to go test out that tech preview, you can go and sign up and take a look. Whereas, say, things like provision services for Azure, now completely available, you can go ahead and just start using that within your cloud environment. Super conscious of time, so I'm going to do a couple more slides and skip the demo. So just wanted to briefly cover off very high level complete architecture slide, how this kind of bolts together. Fundamentally, Citrix DAS is going to be is powered by the resource locations that you hook into, which can be pretty much anywhere. We've got the kind of the top 4 on here that we typically see. So that's customers leveraging Azure, AWS, and GCP for public cloud, and then great partners like Nutanix for their on-prem environment. Effectively, what we need to do as Citrix DAS is get a cloud connector into that resource location. Cloud connector connects back to Citrix Cloud on 443 outbound. And once we've got that established, that then allows us to use the Citrix Cloud management plane to start delivering those desktops and applications into those resource locations. That also allows us to then configure things like HA, DR, availability, all that kind of good stuff. Typically, what we see to maintain high availability, you're looking at a minimum of 2 cloud connectors per resource location. The last guidance I heard from one of my colleagues in consultancies, you kind of scale these cloud connectors like you would an old delivery controller. So if you're an existing Citrix customer, there'll probably some rough guidance there. By all means, check out Citrix Tech Zone, which you'll find that on Google, and you'll find a load of reference architectures for all this stuff, including a reference architecture for Citrix and Nutanix together using the Nutanix plugin that is co-developed by Nutanix and Citrix. I'm sure Chris is going to maybe speak about that. So I don't want to steal your thunder too much because I will definitely get it wrong. But the idea that the idea is you can turn on your Nutanix box and pretty much use name and password, and that's going to get integrated into Citrix DAS's resource location. So if you're using any of these providers, doesn't matter, you know, we're not exclusively on premises with Nutanix, we obviously do any hardware. As long as we can get that cloud connector there, then you can then bridge that gap and start managing all those workloads via Citrix Cloud itself. Just a quick note on the joint solution that we have. Chris, I'm so sorry, I should have run this slide past you, but blatantly didn't. But just wanted to kind of highlight here, I think Nutanix and Citrix have had a great relationship for a number of years, whether that's been formally or informally. And it's nice to see our partnership actually renewed at that kind of more exact level. So we can start actually making some of the good stuff starting to happen. Our licensing is fairly compatible across our per user offerings. And I think as well, the exciting bit for me is we are now working at an engineering level across both our solutions. So Citrix developers working with Nutanix developers on a common roadmap. And I think that is genuinely exciting. So I'm really looking forward to working with you guys a lot more close. So I was going to do a demo, but we're at 18 minutes and I think there's more beer to be drunk. So I'll skip the demo. If anybody wants to see it, just drop me a link. You can find me on Twitter or on LinkedIn. I'll happily set up a separate call. But other than that, I will pass back to the beer guy.
We need to get you a t-shirt, Matt, that says the beer guy.
Oh, absolutely. Is that for me or Matt?
If it's Nutanix branded, I'll wear it at every single event. Or just a bit of branding for you, as well as obviously my amazing Nutanix cooler. Thanks for that. Keeping my beers nice and cold is exactly what I needed for this. Amazing, thanks, John. So the next beer that I'm going to suggest that we go for is Soundwave. So Soundwave, I almost describe as, I guess, the big brother of Lumina in a sense. So it was the first IPA that we ever brewed back in 2013 when we started. So Soundwave is as much as a, I guess, as much of a brand as Siren is. You know, most Siren fans, or most people, I say, you know, if you had a Siren beer before, they generally will go to Soundwave. Always was our, you know, our #1 selling beer. It's only really been taken over by Lumina. For two reasons: B, the trend for people to be able to drink kind of lower ABV beers and that whole kind of sessionable trend, and B, you know, the fact that it's gluten free. But we decided not to make Soundwave gluten free. We just wanted to leave it, you know, as is, you know, as it always has been. But it's 5.6%, so it's got a bit more of a kick than Lumina. It definitely has a bit more pronounced bitterness, you know, whereas Lumina has, you know, pretty much, or next to no bitterness. The slight bit of bitterness that I get from Lumina really comes from the grapefruit flavors, whereas Soundwave does have a pronounced bitterness in the way that we brew it. So it's just bigger, it's bolder, you know, it's still, you know, in my mind, it's got the same kind of flavors. It's got the mango, it's got the grapefruit, it's got that kind of tropical kind of feel, just a bit more oomph, really. And that kind of that's what it is. Or should I say, when we were brewing Lumina, what we were trying to do is brew something that was as tasty as Soundwave, or as tasty as we possibly could make, but was just a bit easier, just a little bit, you know, fresher. And that's kind of where we were going for it. So if you're, you know, you've got two options really in these beers. You want something that's got a bit of a punch, or if it's been a really bad day, you know, you go for Soundwave. Or, you know, if you want something that's a little bit easy drinking, you know, maybe you're watching a couple of football matches, or you're watching a cricket and you need to, you know, pace yourself and, you know, make it through, then, you know, then that Lumina is for you. So just thought I'd talk a little bit about the history of Siren, actually. So I actually alluded to the fact that Darren, our owner, you know, was, and I'm not going to pretend I know anything about it, but he was in, I always say, in the IT industry. I realise saying that in front of you guys is probably, you know, it can be a lot more varied. But he was in, you know, he had a company, or had shares in the company. Decided actually what he was going to do was going to retire. And spend a bit more time with his family. Beer was his passion. It was always something that in his free time he would, you know, be on the other side of the bar. You know, always wanted to try the new beers. You know, much kind of like, I guess, what we're doing right now. And so in his, I guess, early retirement, should I say, he actually started to homebrew and kind of really, get a little bit more into what was involved. Turns out he was pretty good at it, actually. We've actually got a picture of him brewing in his bathtub, not physically in his bathtub, but all the bits of kit in there. And we always say, that was the first ever Siren beer. And I guess it kind of escalated from there. He would, maybe go on a holiday and he'd find the local brewery. He would speak to people about beer, and this hobby turned into a little bit of an obsession. To the point of where, he had this voice and this constant nagging in his head, you can do this, this is your step, maybe this is what you always meant to do. He described it as his siren call, and hence where the name Siren came from. So armed with, a new site in Finch Hampstead, his wife and a head brewer in 2013 started up Siren. The first beer ever brewed was Maiden. It was our Maiden voyage, and you'll see there's a lot of kind of nautical references in the beers that we brew, and lots of references to kind of Greek mythology and the storytelling aspect, because storytelling is really important in what we do. So he started off in that sense. He managed to recruit a really incredible head brewer called Ryan at the time. He'd been brewing in Europe for craft beer royalty, breweries such as Mikula, Omnipolo, Tuol, a really, I guess a thoroughbred brewer, you could call him. And I guess maybe in an analogy I always use on our brewery tours, it's almost like convincing Lionel Messi to join Mansfield Town. It was a massive coup for us, because he brought all that knowledge, but all those connections at the same time. And so in year one, we were voted the second best new brewery in the whole world and the first best new brewery in the UK. And then every single year since, we're in the top 100. I just find that quite incredible, because we're a sleepy, a tiny small brewery, in the sleepy little village of Finch Hampstead. And from that point, if you ever come down to us, you'll see we technically, I would say we're in the middle of nowhere. But every single drop of beer that we brew is brewed there, whether you're having it at the brewery and our pub just down the road, the other side, in Manchester and the other up, on the other side of the country up north, or Australia and China, where our beer gets to. Every single drop of that beer is brewed by us, so that we can control all of the quality, and it's shipped directly from there. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster story. We're still quite a young company, but humble beginnings, and and we are still 100% independent. That's the ultimate, the goal. That's what we want to stay, because we want to have complete control over the beer. We want to make sure that it's the beer that we want to brew. It's not, there's no investors that will start telling us what to do, or how to brew it to save money and costs and things like that. The beer that we want to brew is kind of what we brew. And so that's where we are today, really. So it's been a kind of crazy couple of years with everything that's been going on, of course. But these two beers are kind of the pillars, I guess, of Siren. I've just seen Chris, Soundwave gets the votes for Chris. I think you've got these two beers, they're sitting similar lanes, either kind of like going off in either direction. So and yeah, John, Soundwave, it's such a good beer. And these are the staples of what we do that allow us to brew the kind of the crazier beers. That we'll try one of them in a minute. So I think at that point, I'll kind of hand back over. Hopefully you enjoyed Lumina. You've got a Soundwave in your glass, so hopefully you enjoy that. During the next part of your presentation, I'll hand over to who's up next.
Chris, you hand over to Chris. I need a catchy title like the Beer Man, though. I guess I must be the Converged Man or something. I don't know. No, in fact, that brings all sorts of weird visions to my head. Maybe not. Maybe not. Thanks, Matt. I managed to get halfway down that glass, though. I better not drink it too fast because I've got to actually talk to you guys. So let me share my screen. Okay. So carrying on the Nutanix and Citrix awesomeness that John began, just to give you a bit more information about me. I'm, as it says, a field technologist at Nutanix. I also help run the UK Citrix user group. So the connections between people in Nutanix and people in Citrix aren't just kind of little pieces of paper or marketing. They're genuine. So Citrix run a program called a Citrix Technology Professional. There are about 50 in the whole world, and 4 of those 50 work at Nutanix. That's more than any other company in the world. All 4 of those also run Citrix user groups around the world, be that somewhere in the US, it's Scandinavia, and UK like me, that kind of stuff. It really is ingrained. The very first kind of workloads that Citrix deployed to, that Nutanix deployed to as an organization were VDI and primarily Citrix workloads. So in the early days, something like 80% of Nutanix workloads were running VDI, right? So it's such a great fit for Citrix workloads. And I can kind of go through that a little bit. But just like Citrix, Nutanix provides choice, right? So John's gone through all the choices you have about where you're going to run your applications from, how your users are going to access your applications. So it could be, you could be in a global organization, you need to access it in multiple public cloud locations. It could be a local organization, and for whatever reason, be that latency or be that some kind of security auditing you've got to do, it must remain on premises right now, even though you've got applications that are also in the public cloud. We give you that choice. So just like Citrix, Nutanix is an organization focused on choice. We're coming at it from an infrastructure point of view, and Citrix obviously come at it from a people point of view, and here is where we meet. So let's go through it. So let's not beat around the bush. Clouds have got us thinking in a really different way. And it presents some challenges. So people at the top of a business are getting told over and over again, everything's now really simple. Like the whole way of delivering IT services is simple, agile, everybody's doing it this way, and you're lagging behind if you're not doing it like this. And people at the top of a company listen to that advice from outside of the company and go, well, that's how we want our company to run. And then it kind of filters down to technical management, and some of you are in that kind of boat, and you hit like an argument, because you know there's a lot of technical debt sitting inside your organization, and it's not just a simple case of pressing a button and magically you can run in this new world. And it's also not just the case where you've got the staff who have the skills in order to do it. And what organizations find themselves in is sometimes a little bit of a kind of a crazy halfway house, where they've got this legacy infrastructure that they're trying to shoehorn into running things in the public cloud without really thinking it through. And one of the biggest telltale signs that it hasn't been thought through, and forgive me if this describes any of your organizations, is an organization that says, I am going to put 70% of my workloads in the public cloud within 18 months. If that statement is made, it normally means they just haven't thought about it. They haven't thought it through, because typically it takes way longer than that to get a decent number of applications refactored into the public cloud, unless all you're going to do is lift and shift your technical debt to make it someone else's problem, and that's going to cost you money. Okay. So what normally happens is people just set off with the cloud as the goal, and this is the beautiful future. Away we go. Only a couple of them are joined up. The security admin is back here going, hey guys, I think we need to think about this a little bit. But nonetheless, they press on, get to the top of the mountain, and the goal is still just as far away as it ever was. And some companies do this. They then see that they're challenged, but they now want to get there at all costs, because they're seeing this as a destination for them to get to. And that, unsurprisingly, is also going to cost them money. Whereas what we just need to do is just take a step back. They need to accept the fact that most organizations have got technical debt, and it's actually going to take quite a long time to get rid of that, to re-platform, refactor. But at the same time, public cloud is providing this really cool stuff. So all these choices that Citrix are providing about running things in all these different places is great. And what Nutanix allows you to do is actually sit those desktops, their infrastructure, wherever you want, but provide the best possible experience in order to do that. One of the biggest things Nutanix allows you to do is to take what you already have, operate it in such an efficient way that it frees up the same size team in your organization to be able to start doing this new sexy stuff. The biggest issue really is skills. So I'm trying to learn this new cloud stuff, but I haven't got the time because I'm still having to firefight my existing infrastructure. If we can have a cloud operating model on our existing stuff, that means we need 2/3 of the people, or maybe fewer, to operate that stuff. And we don't need specialists anymore. So when they're ill with COVID, I don't get hit in the face because my storage administrator is not here. I don't need those specialist skills. Everything can be done with generalists. That then buys me the time to do all this really cool public cloud stuff. It buys you the opportunity to then go to Citrix and go, well, hang on, I've got some of these desktops I need to run in this location, but some of these desktops I need to run over here. I've got secure web browsing I need to operate from this other location. As my organization transitions from one to another, it's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's taking advantage of organizations that provide you with choice. This slide is purely there just to make sure everyone's eyes are open. The facts on the left are publicized all over the internet, okay? The information on the right is hardly ever shared. And the reason is it doesn't tell the story that whoever's selling you something wants you to hear, okay? The stuff on the left basically tell you the public cloud end user spending is growing really fast. And it is. But it's not growing at the expense of everything else. It's all growing. So total IT spend is growing really fast as well. So spending on software, infrastructure, that kind of stuff, that is also growing. And that's the information on the right-hand side. So we need to be careful about which facts we believe when someone's standing in front of us presenting stuff. And that includes me, right? So I've included those links for you to go away and do your own research. Don't just believe that public cloud is eating on-prem's lunch. What is actually happening is both these markets are growing. And that's how it's happening right now. That may change, right? But currently, we're not seeing that as a reality. Certainly from a Gartner point of view, for sure. So, Nutanix, what relevance have they got? Well, what we do, as I've kind of alluded to, is we take all these separate things, these different ways of working that John will have worked in and I worked in kind of 15 years ago, we collapse it all together into a cloud console. But the really cool thing, and those of you that use Azure will get the right feel, and AWS console, it's the same kind of thing. It's a cloud console where I can manage pretty much everything in a graphical interface. I can manage my networking, storage, everything, my users, my backups, my automation. So when John was talking about, oh, we could get an automated connection into ServiceNow and get that to do something with Citrix, exactly the same thing happens with Nutanix. I can use a solution such as ServiceNow or any other third party, really, glue that in and actually get it to spin up infrastructure. So a developer or a researcher or whatever happens to be can spin up something that results in infrastructure being created inside a Nutanix cluster. So it makes everything really simple to manage. It operates what you've already got as a cloud service. And this is really the key, right? This is what buys you your operational efficiency. This is why Nutanix is such a popular organization. It's why if you go to Gartner Peer Insights, everybody's giving it 5-star reviews who is already a customer, okay? How do we do that? Well, we basically take all these separate components, we deliver it in single kind of, I think John used Lego bricks. It's that kind of thing. It's completely linearly scalable to massive scale. We've got companies with 200,000 desktops running on these things, and the scale is linear. The performance doesn't drop off. Okay, no other solution does that. And that includes any other hyperconverged solution, by the way, and I'll explain why. So what Nutanix does is it takes what you and I would call a server. It allows you to run your VMs on their servers, just like any other server, but it also delivers software-defined networking in there as well, and it allows you to deliver what's called a distributed storage fabric, which is really where the magic is. And that magic basically boils down to the fact that the virtual machine on a node always writes to the local node. And because it's always writing to the local node, it actually doesn't matter how many nodes there are, because I always get the same level of performance. If the VM moves to a different node, it always writes to the local node. Now that sounds simple, but Nutanix is the only solution that does this. So this is really where we're coming from. So other solutions might look the same, but Nutanix really took what Google were doing with the Google Cloud. They brought that to a solution that you could consume in a normal sized data center that wasn't a hyperscaler, and then we build out from there. Most other solutions are building from three-tier physical infrastructure, and they're virtualizing what used to be three-tier on-prem. Nutanix has come from the public cloud. We understand how that public cloud architecture works, and that's how Nutanix operates. And we can do it across providers. So this is really where you've got choice, right? So if you had Citrix Cloud, I could choose to deploy native Citrix desktops inside Azure, in GCP, in AWS, and that's all great. What you can also do, should you choose to, and you've got that motivation to do it, is say, well, hang on, I want one single management console for my entire thing. I don't want to be deploying different kinds of desktops in different places. What I can do is I can have a solution on premises. I might be able to have a Nutanix cluster inside AWS, another one in Azure, another one on a non-hyperscaler, so Equinix or OVH Cloud or a whole bunch of others. And I've got one console that manages the entire thing from an infrastructure point of view. And then with Citrix, you could have one console that manages everything from a desktop's point of view. Yeah, the two things kind of align pretty well. Nutanix gives you the choice in order to do that. Okay, how about Citrix? So in a nutshell, the situation is this. This is a legal statement, so apologies, it's quite wordy. Nutanix is the Citrix preferred solution for HCI and hybrid multi-cloud. So HCI and hybrid multi-cloud is kind of what I've just explained to you, where we collapse all this stuff in one place. Largely, you've got on-premises infrastructure, but you've also got infrastructure that runs both in public cloud and in non-hyperscaler solutions as well. The reverse is also true, right? So from a Nutanix point of view, Citrix is the preferred choice for enterprise EUC inside Nutanix. This, as John has already mentioned, is not just marketing. This is engineering is happening here. We're co-developing roadmaps. We're releasing things all the time. I'll give you a QR code. It's bigger than John's. And I'll give you right at the end so you can go and click on it.
Heard that before.
Yeah. My QR code is bigger than John's, but wait for it. Now, why is it so cool? Well, you've got all these layers to delivering stuff for people, and it can be complicated. Citrix have gone a long way in simplifying this with their DAS solution, right? Particularly the managed solutions where you don't really need that level of VDI skill inside your organization. That's being done for you and you're subscribing to a service. But what Nutanix allows you to do is kind of blend the best bits that Citrix is doing here and the best bits of Nutanix. And there is a great little overlap, right? The reason why there's an overlap with profile management here is Nutanix delivers file services into profile management that Citrix can then make use of. But it basically means you're simplifying the entire stack. You haven't got multiple providers doing all of these things. But let's give you just one piece of information on one technical advantage of Nutanix over pretty much any other solution, right? If I normally deploy non-persistent desktops, I have a gold virtual machine, right? And that deploys to all these other virtual machines. Now, this environment is really replicating what life is like with a SAN. Okay, so that gold virtual machine, imagine that's on a SAN. What happens is the traffic in the node that's got that gold VM in is very high. Okay, because the gold VM is being referenced by everything. And that creates a problem, particularly with scale. So larger organizations really struggle with this because you get bottlenecks extremely quickly on things like SAN controllers and stuff like that. App layering makes it even worse because I now deliver my app layers from the same location and I quickly get flooded. If I have a solution that does have some locality, but it's what Nutanix calls spray and pray, I'll leave it up to you to work out whose architecture this is, but it's another hyper-converged vendor, right? What basically happens is the gold image kind of works itself out okay, but the virtual machines have no idea or no connection to the data. And what that means is virtually all the virtual machines are writing to disk, which is not on the node that they're on, and they don't know it. So the network traffic is much higher. So this is when you look at other hyperconverged solutions, and this is why they're currently starting to recommend things like 100 gig networking to take account of this kind of stuff. What Nutanix does is really cool. It takes that gold VM and it creates what's called a shadow clone. Now, as soon as multiple VMs read from that gold VM, it takes the shadow clone and it copies it to every single node. And what that means is the virtual machines on each node aren't reading from the original gold VM, they're reading from the shadow clone. That's local speed, not network speed. When they write, the VMs are always writing locally. This is one of the main reasons why Nutanix is so popular with VDI and so popular specifically with Citrix, because this now can scale to hundreds of thousands of users without dropping performance. Okay. Now, this isn't just IOPS, right? Any other company can go and talk about IOPS. This is genuine application level performance linearity. And as John says, we've got reference architecture and we've got numbers looking at performance, and some of our CTPs, 2 out of our CTPs are in our performance engineering team. They do this all day long. So they're in direct contact with the guys over at Citrix, and they're co-developing these solutions ongoing. Plus, we can also deliver file services directly into the same infrastructure, the same console. So from a virtual desktop's point of view, a Citrix administrator is not having to kind of troubleshoot issues with a storage administrator. They bring those departmental and those home drives and profiles into the same solution that's delivering Citrix. They've got overall management of that. They can troubleshoot and triage that issue much, much faster. And I can also use microsegmentation, which is extremely easy to switch on. You turn microsegmentation on inside Nutanix literally with a tick box. If you look at other microsegmentation solutions, you could be deploying it for months in order to get it operational. Microsegmentation in Nutanix is operational within an afternoon. And what this means, you can firewall your desktops from each other. You can firewall contractors apart from permanent employees. Researchers might be working on something confidential. You can determine which desktops access which data. This is genuine firewall level security. This is not just VLANing things. Any hacker in the world can overcome VLAN separation pretty quickly. This is firewall segregation, stopping port to port and east-west traffic. We can also do ID-based security based on who you log in as. So I could log in as a contractor and it determines what happens to me. And I could then log in separately as a permanent employee or in a different department or a different geo. And then I can get treated differently from a Nutanix point of view. Citrix has got solutions like this as well. And these meet and kind of marry up really nicely. And we've got loads of integrations. So we co-developed, as John's already mentioned, the Citrix provisioning services plugin. We're moving to a future where those plugins are actually no longer required. We've got so many customers running Citrix workloads that we're going to build in the functionality of these plugins into the core platform. And that means it's going to work straight off the bat without any plugin. That is future, right? But it's very near future. That has already been developed. So we've got connections into all this stuff. If I go into the Prism console, this management console, I can go straight into Citrix Cloud just by specifying that, my Citrix Cloud location, and then boom, it's connected. Everything inside Citrix can see the Nutanix storage and deploy applications in that way. But here's my massive QR code. Feel free to point your mobile phone to that. That takes you to a landing page that's going to tell you all sorts of stuff about ROI and how you can deploy 2,000 desktops into AWS with no previous Nutanix cluster and no Citrix implementation, by the way. So this is just a customer who has AWS, and then they have Citrix on-prem, and within 2 hours, I can get 2,000 desktops running in a Nutanix cluster with Citrix running as well in less than 2 hours. It's actually 1 hour, 47 minutes or something, right? It's really quite impressive, the speed of this stuff. And a whole load of other things as well, test drives and all that kind of good stuff. But without further ado, I will leave it at that. And I will pass back to Matt to follow up on the beer tasting.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, beer. Okay, so beer number 3. I'm going to suggest, just for a little bit of a change, or just to mix up a little bit, the next beer that we try is this one here called Best Kept Secrets. This is one of our newest beers. It's a Belgian blonde ale. So for fans of Belgian style beer, or if you've not tried a Belgian style beer, I think this would be a really interesting one that we can get involved in. So I'm just going to pour a bit of wine out now. So as mentioned earlier, all our core range beers come in these smaller cans. They're kind of easy drinking. The price point is also a consideration when we put beers into smaller cans. But the more specialist ones, you always see these in these bigger cans. So Best Kept Secrets is a one-off special. It's our Belgian kind of blonde ale. We really like kind of flexing our muscles with and trying all kinds of different beers. I think I also mentioned previously that we brewed over 110 different beers just last year. There's an endless amount of styles of beer out there, and endless possibilities and endless things that you can brew. And we like to try as a brewery. And this doesn't go for everyone. There are some very specialist breweries that will, stick to one style or one kind of genre. But we like to try as many different beers as possible. So this is our kind of take on, I wouldn't say a traditional Belgian blonde because we've kind of taken it in a different way. We've brewed with Belgian candy sugar. We've used a traditional Abbey ale yeast, and we've used kind of German hops. And then some sea buckthorn and pink peppercorns for a bit of kind of a floral spice. So you can see it's kind of a little bit more of an amber kind of color, in comparison to Lumina. It's got that, you can get the kind of the candy sugar and that real kind of caramel kind of like scent on the nose, and also that really kind of traditional spicy kind of Belgian yeast. And you can tell it's a Belgian beer just as you drink it, but with something a little bit different going on. And this is our chance, should I say, this is our brewer's chance to really kind of try new things. Brewing very much is a creative kind of industry, especially craft beer. There is well over probably 350 styles of beer out there. In any one of those styles you can then take into your own direction by adding different ingredients, changing the ABV and trying all these new things. So the brewers, obviously, while their day job is to brew lots and lots of Lumina and Soundwave, so you can all have that beer that you can depend on, that beer that is going to be great. They also like to, as a side project, try these new things. Some of them are not going to be for everybody. Some people will will have one that they love and it will never come out again, which is equally as gutting as someone who buys a beer and doesn't, it's not quite their thing. But this is what we're all about, is trying these new things and seeing what we can do and where we can take beer. And best kept secrets is definitely about that. So I realise I've kind of spoken a lot about beer and ingredients and stuff like that, but I haven't actually really talked about how we brew beer. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. I'll just keep it really basic because we could be here for hours. But essentially there's 4 ingredients in beer. You've got water, you've got yeast, you've got hops, and you've got malts. And as long as you're using those 4 ingredients and you follow those 4 steps, you have a beer. And that's essentially what beer is. That's what defines a beer. Similar to, if you're making cider, you use apples. If you make perry, you use pears. If you make wine, you use grapes. If you use those 4 ingredients and you follow these steps, you have yourself a beer. And that's essentially what beer is, or what beer means. What you do is you take these malts. They've got tons of sugar in there that we need to get access to. So what we do is we steep them in hot water, about 68 degrees for about an hour. And all that's doing is drawing the sugar out of the malts and into the water, into the liquid. After that point, you remove the malts. You don't need those anymore, and all you're left with is really sugary liquid called wort, which is the basis of the beer. Once you've done that, you move this into a kettle where you boil it. 2 reasons you do this. One is to get rid of any bacteria, make sure it's drinkable and there's no nastiness in there. 2, this is where you can start adding in hops. Now, hops are there for 3 reasons. There's 3 reasons we use hops in beer. 1 is for bitterness, 1 is for aroma, and 1 is for stability. So bitterness, of course, everyone will know what bitterness is. It's how you get bitterness. It's how you get that bitter note into a beer. You can only do this when the liquid is hot. It goes through a chemical transformation process called isomerization, which essentially dissolves bitterness into a liquid. Aroma, we always talk about aroma rather than flavour, but basically it means flavour. It's what makes the beers taste like mango. It's what makes it taste like grapefruit. It's just the way that the way that you taste things. It's the way that your retronasal system works and how you taste. And third, stability. Hops actually keep a beer stable and preserve it to keep it good for a longer amount of time. So you'll put hops in at the boil if you want a very bitter beer. You put hops in at the end of the boil if you don't want a bitter beer. In the case of Lumina, we didn't put any hops in the boil because we didn't want any bitterness. Once you've boiled it and you've put hops in or not, you then cool the liquid down and you move it into a fermenter. And at this point, you put the yeast in, and quite simply, the yeast eats the sugar, creates alcohol and CO2, and you've got yourself beer. So on paper, it's a very, very simple process. But actually, when you kind of dive really deeply, you've got hundreds of different types of malts, hundreds of different types of beer, hundreds of different types of water profiles, and hundreds of different types of yeast. And by changing these and using these in different quantities, conjunctions, all these create completely different beers, which is why actually there's lots of different types of beers. I mean, most people, if I went up to on the street, I said, name me 5 types of beer, I think they'd get to lager and then get stout, made famous obviously by lagers and Guinness. There is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, but what we're doing is we're creating new styles every single day, because we're using different ingredients and we're coming up with new ideas and new flavors, and we're almost reinventing beer. And that's really what the craft beer movement is. It's taking the best ingredients and using the best innovations and using the best kind of technology, to be able to kind of create beer. I brew myself. I've got this really new and completely pointless and expensive gadget, but I absolutely love it. That you put in the fermenter and it connects to your phone via Bluetooth, and it measures every single thing that's going on in the fermenter. So the temperature it's at, how the fermentation's going, CO2 levels, all these different things. And all I have to do is open my app and I can see what's going on my phone. That's an incredible bit of technology to have, because the fermentation is super important. And actually after that, I can actually export that data and upload it into another app. And then log it, so I can then see if I've made a particularly bad beer. I can then go back through that data and see at what point something might have happened that caused the infection or caused an off flavor, or if I've made a particularly good beer, I've got all that data, so I can remember, well, I need to replicate this because this is how I make a good beer. So technology in beer is really, really advancing, and it's really exciting that, you know, the beers that we're able to make today, most incredible beers possible. You know, while traditional brewing is, you know, usually old school methods, you know, I'm definitely a fan of technology in beer and allowing us to make sure that, you know, the beer is really good. I like tradition, but I also like drinking really nice beer. So technology helps us to do that, and that's you know, super exciting. So yeah, that's you know, that's kind of a little bit on how to brew beer, and you know, and this beer. If anyone's got any questions, you know, do put them through on the chat, or feedback, or anything like that. It'd be really good to see. In fact, you know, I don't know what everyone's favourite beer so far is. I think mine is probably the Belgian Blonde, because it's just a style that I really enjoy. But I think, Chris, you said Soundwave. I don't know if your vote still is in Soundwave.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I'm just finished Soundwave, so I didn't want to get 3 beers on the go at once, Matt. So I still have to function this evening, if I'm honest. Lumina's got a vote, so that's all good. That's all good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Lumina is I don't like to use the term too much. You know, I call it inoffensive because it doesn't really paint it in the best picture, but you know, that's, you know, exactly what it is. I don't think I've ever met anyone who doesn't like Lumina. You know, it's not gonna in some senses, it's not gonna absolutely blow your socks off, or it's not gonna be that kind of beer that you kind of sit back and you think, wow, that's incredible. But it's that beer that, you know, I always go back to it. And you know, I think I probably drank quite a lot of it yesterday because, let's face it, it was so hot that I wasn't able to do anything else. So I think I quit working at about 3 o'clock and just had a beer. And that's kind of the beer it is. So yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say, Matt, is you've brought the whole IT geek into beer by giving the immortal words of a pointless, expensive gadget. Like there's nothing an IT geek likes more than the pointless, expensive gadget. So, so when you say you're data logging good beer and bad beer, what's the percentage? So has a lot gone down the drain? Have you been pretty successful with this wonderful gadget of yours?
Yeah, actually, what's even geekier about this gadget, Chris, is it's, you know, those little wind up duck toys that you could put in your bath and its feet kind of paddle and it moves around. It's the same as that, because actually what that does is it helps oxygenate the beer. So it is a Bluetooth duck that flaps around in the fermenter. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world, but yeah, it's amazing. I've only used it a couple of times, and you know, both of those beers have been quite good, and it's, you know, you can just look back at that data, because what's super important in actually when you brew beer, that first process, you know, the mash and the boil and all that, that's really very, very easy. You know, it's like making a soup. There's not really an awful lot can go wrong. It's the fermentation that's the hard part, because ideally you want to control, you know, how much oxygen gets in there or doesn't get in there, the fermentation temperatures, all these things. And, you know, and if you didn't have that data, and you put the yeast in, you just walked off, and you come back in a week's time, you tried the beer, and it, you know, it doesn't taste right. There's no frame of reference as to what went wrong, because you can't stand there and watch it, you know, for a week. So this data is kind of really important, because you can see the spikes in these temperatures, and then you can you know, look back and say, well, you know, why did it spike? You know, was it a particularly hot day? Because, you know, it depends what equipment you're using, and then how can I prevent that? You know, can I upgrade my cooling system, or you know, or can I put it in a cooling jacket and things like that? So it's looking back at those bits of data and seeing where it went wrong. Actually, you know, mine's been quite good, and you know, luckily I haven't got a beer in my fermenter at the moment, because if I'd have had it over the last 2 days, it would have been completely ruined, because brewing beer or fermenting beer in 35 degrees is not a good idea unless you've got a state-of-the-art cooling system. So that, you know, that will be super important going forward. And you know, and I can save that, and you know, looking back, and you know, it's a little bit different to cooking. You know, if you're cooking, sometimes you will watch it and you'll know exactly what's going on because it's a short term. But when you're talking about a beer that could take, you know, 12 to 20 days to ferment, you're not going to sit there and watch it. So having that, you know, having that constant stream of data coming through, even the real time, you know, if notifications, if you set data range, you know, you want the beer to be fermenting at 18 degrees, and you can set alerts between 17 and 19. So if it goes outside of that, you know, if I'm at home, I can go and have a look at it and figure out, you know, what's going on, and, you know, and make tweaks. So having that, you know, is super important. You know, and hundreds of years ago, they wouldn't have had that, and you know, the beer comes out, and I doubt hundreds of years ago they would have, you know, thrown a batch of beer down it. They probably would have just blended it with a nice beer and just sold it, which is not what happens today. But yeah, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a bit of a game changer for me going forward. But you know, on the other side of it is a pointless little Bluetooth duck that just swirls around.
Hey, it's not pointless, Matt. It sounds amazing. I kind of want to brew beer just to get a Bluetooth duck. Gotta be honest. It's one of those IT things, I guess. It's data. It's ruling our lives.
Absolutely. You know, similar to that, I just bought something. There's definitely a crossover between people who like beer and people who like barbecues. And I've just bought a meter, which essentially you insert into the meat, and it gives you real-time temperature and tells you when, based on the current temperature and all that, it should be ready. And
yeah, I got one of them.
yeah, 100 quid on the thermometer, and I've got one that costs 2 quid from IKEA. But yeah, it's Bluetooth, so sign me up.
Yeah. I think, yeah, we're kindred spirits, my friend, kindred spirits. Anyone else got any questions, either beer related or otherwise? John and I talk to each other all the time over at Citrix, and also the guys at Bytes. So happy to have a follow-up conversation if that's required.
There's a poll running at the moment that everyone can see, so feel free to mark that if you want any demos, as John, or anything that John and Chris ran through. More than happy to help support set those up. Any questions now?
So from a Nutanix point of view, we also have a completely independent test drive. One of those test drives is setting up Citrix inside AWS on Nutanix. So, and that's completely free. Just Google Nutanix test drive and you'll find it. Loads of resources available to you guys. Siren is obviously available in every supermarket.
I'm actually just going to pop in, just in the chat. There's a nice little 15% discount code if you want to order some beers direct from our website. So you go onto sirencraftbrew.com, just type that in the coupon code and that'll give you 15% off. So is there any beer here that you've enjoyed, or if you want to go on there and look at some of our beers and try a few things out, and yeah, you're welcome to use that, and feel free to, you know, share around your wider companies, friends, and things like that. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Matt.
Appreciate that, Matt, and thank you obviously to Chris and John as well, and as well as Matt for the event. As we said, if there's any questions or anything, please do let us know. We'll follow up afterwards with any of the content that we can share. But yeah, hopefully everyone enjoyed the Brewtanix webinar. Thank you very much for all of your time.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks everyone, and thanks. Yeah, there's been some really nice comments, so hopefully I'm glad you all enjoyed the beers, and yeah, brilliant. Happy Wednesday.
Thanks everybody. Thanks Matt. Thanks Dan.
Cheers guys. Thank you very much.